Shalom, this is David Ben Shul. I'm going to be covering the First Commandment. The commandments, depending on what version you follow, do change. The First Commandment actually starts on verse 2 of Genesis. We'll see in verse 1 it actually says, "Then God spoke all these words, saying." Many versions of the Ten Commandments out there actually start on what's called the Second Commandment, which is starting in verse 3. You see, "You shall have no other gods before me." That's usually what you see as the First Commandment, but actually the First Commandment is verse 2, where it says, and by the way, I'm reading from NASB, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." Now, on first inspection of this commandment, it's probably very obvious that it almost sounds like he's bringing people out of Egypt twice. You see in the very beginning, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt." And then secondly, it says, "out of the house of slavery." So, one has to ask themselves, why is this being repeated, or are there two different meanings that are being portrayed here? The first portion of it says, "I am the Lord your God." It's a declaration. And actually, a quick look at this verse, you'll notice, or should be noted anyway, that this is not a commandment, rather a statement. So the Ten Commandments actually starts with a statement. It's something, do you believe this? And then the remainder of the commandments are for you. But do you believe the very first commandment? "I am Hashem your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Now, the land of Egypt, we know, Israel and the mixed multitude, can't forget the mixed multitude, they were part of it too, had enough, were finished with society as it was, were tired of the gods, the God-man concept, obviously speaking of Pharaoh, and they understood that through all these plagues, that this was the real God, that this was the Creator, and that the gods that Egypt worshipped and idolized were in fact false. So, who did the plagues? Who brought Israel and the mixed multitude out of Egypt? Well, it was, as it says, "I am the Lord your God." Sometime I have to go in and explain what that actually means. There's a lot of deep understanding there. But then after that it says, "out of the house of slavery." You say, wait a minute, what is the house of slavery? Well, let's take a step back. What happened to the patriarchs? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joseph is another one. They learned in a house. They were taught in a tent. So a house is a learning place. Back then they didn't have schools the way we have schools now. The family themselves were the ones that taught the children their religious beliefs, shared the education with the kids and profession. It was from house to house. So the house was the source of an education. The house was the source of learning and the example for which the children were to follow in their own households. So when we talk about a house here, we're really talking about a place of learning. Now think of it this way. In the Shema, what did they talk about in the Shema? It says to what? Put them upon your doorposts. Mezuzah. Now I'm not saying the mezuzah itself is, because mezuzah actually means doorpost. But it's a declaration. What happened also with the lamb? There was blood put on what? Doorposts. This was a declaration saying, at this door and beyond, into this house, we will teach about our Creator, no other gods. So it's a declaration of ourselves saying, hey, we're going to teach Torah here. Now, it says, out of the house of bondage, out of the house of slavery. Israel had the opportunity to leave the vain philosophies and teachings of the Egyptians and institute the teachings of our Creator, which starts where? Starting the Second Commandment, essentially. So, What is this verse telling us? It's saying to us very simply, I am your God. I am your creator, who through plagues and miraculous means, we're including the splitting of the Red Sea, brought you out of the land of Egypt. Egypt pushed you out. Egypt couldn't get rid of you fast enough. They paid you. They gave you gold, silver. They gave you precious gems to get out. That's how great I am. I got you out of there. Out of Egypt. Out of the bondage of Egypt. Not just physical bondage, but bondage in all shapes and forms. Bondage, monetary bondage, slavery, as I already mentioned, physical bondage. We live in a bondage today that many are not aware of that we're actually in. We get up in the morning to get in our car to go to work. But in order to work, you have to have the car, but you have to have a job to have the car. But once you have the car, you have to make sure you can maintain it, pay the gas, and pay the insurance. So you need the job to do all this, but you still need the car to get to the job. You see the cyclical bondage that we're in? It's subtle, but it is there. So this is the type of bondage we're talking about, a bondage that forces us to be part of the world and prevents us from having a relationship with our God continuously. In other words, there's always things in the way. Okay. And I took you out of the house of bondage, out of the house of slavery. I took you out of all this learning. You don't have to learn vain philosophies. Sorry, kids, you do have to learn math. Algebra is good. We're not talking about algebra. We're not talking about math. We're not talking about, history. We're talking about philosophy. We're talking about religion. We're talking about a way of life that is contrary to the way the Creator wants us to live. This is what He's pulling us out of. And we are to make our own homes. And this is a bonus for the homeschoolers. But not only that, even if your kids do go to public school, we are still responsible for teaching the children right and wrong according to our Creator's teachings, according to Torah. All right, I hope this gave everyone a better understanding of this passage. And if you believe in all this, then the remainder of the Torah is yours. Baruch Hashem. All right, have a great day. Shalom.